He forged papers to ruin me. I stayed quiet, then revealed the truth. He begged for forgiveness. Anna Collins had always been the quiet kind, the kind who found solace among rows of books, the faint rustle of pages providing a calm soundtrack to her otherwise ordinary days. As the town librarian of Cedarwood, a small community nestled between rolling hills and tight-knit neighbors, she lived a life many envied for its simplicity and warmth. Every morning, she arrived early to arrange books, greet familiar faces, and help locals discover stories beyond their reach. Her world was predictable, safe, and steeped in gentle routines that made her feel grounded. Yet beneath her calm exterior, Anna carried a sensitive heart and a strong sense of justice, though she rarely voiced her opinions too loudly. Conflict was something she avoided, not out of fear, but because she believed patience and understanding could untangle most knots. That serene bubble shattered the day Richard Benson returned to Cedarwood. Richard had been Anna's college acquaintance, talented and ambitious, but also ruthless and proud. Over the years, the college memories of late-night debates and shared study sessions had faded into mere shadows of who he had become. A sharp-tongued, influential attorney with a reputation for winning cases no matter the cost. His reappearance in the town seemed casual on the surface, an invitation to a community fundraiser where both were attending. But Anna sensed an undercurrent of something darker beneath his charming smile. Within days, whispers began circulating around the community center, murmurs that didn't reach Anna at first, until one afternoon she overheard a group of neighbors discussing the scandal. Her chest tightened as snippets of a terrible accusation leaked to her ears, that Anna had been involved in misappropriating funds meant for the local literacy program, a project dear to her heart. The more she tried to dismiss it as baseless gossip, the harsher the reality seemed to press in. Then came the meeting that would turn her world upside down. The small town hall was packed with faces she'd greeted countless times, friends, co-workers, neighbors, all framed by a suffocating atmosphere thick with suspicion. Richard stood at the podium, a smug expression fixed as he waved a sheaf of papers. His voice, steady and authoritative, laid out the so-called evidence that portrayed Anna as the mastermind behind a fraudulent scheme siphoning money away from those most in need. The documents were detailed, official-looking, and damning. Anna stood frozen as eyes once warm with familiarity sharpened into pointed blame. Murmurs turned into harsh whispers. The woman who had dedicated her life to cultivating knowledge and kindness was now the subject of contempt and disbelief. She wanted to speak, to deny, to scream that it was all lies. But the hurt was so raw, the betrayal so deep, that the words caught in her throat. The room seemed to close in, every glare a reminder that the community she loved was staring at her like a stranger, a criminal. And Richard? He watched it all unfold with cruel satisfaction, his presence a shadow looming over her shattered reputation. His eyes gleamed with the triumph of someone who believed he held the power to destroy her. The weight of the accusation felt unbearable. And yet beneath the agony, a quiet resolve began to form inside Anna, as fragile as a flickering candle, yet burning with steady determination. She would not let this be the end of her story. Days passed, but the sting of that public accusation stayed raw in Anna's mind, clawing at her peace like a relentless tide. At the library, once a sanctuary, the atmosphere shifted palpably. Where warm hellos had once greeted her, now there was an awkward silence, or worse, the cold avoidance of eyes when she entered a room. The rumor, fueled by Richard's convincing forgeries, had planted a seed of doubt that blossomed into judgment among the townsfolk. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Others whispered cutting remarks behind her back. Anna's name was muttered with suspicion, her integrity questioned in hushed tones. It felt like a slow unraveling of everything she had built by honest work and kindness. The community she had cherished now seemed a hostile place, filled with looks of disappointment and betrayal. She remembered Mrs. Peterson, who had once come by every Thursday to discuss book club plans, now crossing the street quickly upon spotting her, avoiding even a glance. Her closest friends hesitated, unsure how to reconcile the friend they knew with the accusations publicly paraded. Even the librarian's assistant, usually cheerful and supportive, had become distant, absorbed with other duties and avoiding deeper conversations. Anna's heart fractured, but still she chose silence. She kept her head down, enduring the unbearable isolation without lashing out. She feared that responding too quickly, too vehemently, would only deepen public suspicion or give Richard more ammunition. The weight of the town's judgment settled heavily, pressing down on her chest with every shallow breath. At night, tearful and alone in the cramped apartment above the library, she wrestled with despair that threatened to drown her. Why would Richard do this? What had she done to deserve such cruelty? The pain was rough and raw, and the injustice was maddening. She replayed countless times how those forged papers had so easily twisted her truth, reducing decades of honest work to a vilified headline. The unfairness seethed within her, a bitter companion she couldn't shake. Yet beneath the hurt was something else, a fragile, flickering spark of refusal. She refused to let this cruel lie define her. Richard, on the other hand, thrived. In meetings and coffee shop conversations, he pushed the narrative, ensuring her fall from grace was complete. His smile, half concealed beneath his polished charm, was a constant reminder of the power he wielded. He seemed to enjoy watching a woman so quietly strong crumble under his calculated assault. The arrogance was palpable, his sense of victory intoxicating. But Anna's silence was not weakness. It was a quiet rebellion. She knew her truth remained unspoken, but not unheard. To those feeling the sting of betrayal, she wished they understood the pain of being judged before being heard. To anyone facing a similar storm, she wanted them to know resilience wasn't born overnight. It was forged in the quiet fury of enduring hardship with steadfast hope. If you've ever been overwhelmed by unfair judgment or watched someone you care about suffer unjustly, remember, sometimes the most powerful fights are those fought in silence before the moment of undeniable truth arrives. Hold on to that hope. It's the shield that guards the soul when the world seems poised to tear you apart. Anna knew she couldn't stay hidden forever. The weight of silence was growing unbearable, yet rushing headlong into confrontation felt just as frightening. So she began cautiously, taking small steps to reclaim some control in the chaos. Each morning, she arrived early at the library, burying herself in her work, careful to avoid gossip or unnecessary attention. But even here, her sanctuary was stained by whispers and wary glances. The once comforting aisles of books now seemed crowded with invisible eyes, as if the shelves themselves had turned suspicious. Determined to clear her name quietly, Anna started to gather information. She painstakingly reviewed every document related to the literacy program's finances, looking for discrepancies or clues that might explain how money had supposedly gone missing. Her knowledge of the system was her only weapon. She knew every ledger, every receipt. Yet, frustration mounted as every paper seemed untarnished, every account reconciled. The forged documents Richard had produced looked genuine, too genuine. It felt like chasing shadows. She tried to reach out to friends who might stand by her, but the fear of association with a scandal made many hesitant. A few brief conversations ended with veiled warnings or awkward silences. Even her attempts to speak at town meetings were met with cold shoulders or interruptions. The community's trust was fraying beyond repair, and Anna found herself slipping deeper into isolation. Still, amid this darkness, tiny flickers of hope sparked. A routine audit report arrived unexpectedly, one that hadn't circulated publicly. It hinted at irregularities, not in Anna's favor, but contained details inconsistent with Richard's accusations. Encouraged, she tracked down the auditor, an elderly man named Mr. Hansen, who was sympathetic and agreed to quietly assist her review the records more thoroughly. Anna clung to this small lifeline, dedicating late nights to combing through complex spreadsheets and transaction logs. Each new discovery, no matter how minor, was a victory. A misplaced date here, a bank confirmation that didn't match up there. Her hope grew steadily, fueling her determination to expose the truth. But for every promising lead, a roadblock appeared. Locked offices, unreturned calls, programmed secrecy that whispered of hidden interests protecting Richard's fabrication. The setbacks tested her resolve. One evening, after a frustrating day of dead ends, tears spilled down Anna's cheeks as she sank into her chair. The enormity of the challenge pressing down. She doubted. She questioned whether exposing lies in a town that seemed ready to believe anything against her was even possible. Could she break through the wall of deceit orchestrated by a powerful adversary? Yet something deep inside refused to let her give up. Not just for her own sake, but for the community she loved and the truth that demanded justice. In moments of solitude, she whispered to herself, "I will not be broken. I am stronger than their lies." If you've ever felt overwhelmed by obstacles or doubted your ability to fight injustice, remember that resilience is built in these quiet battles. Each small step forward, each piece of truth uncovered matters. Keep searching, even when the path seems impossible, because light can break through the thickest shadows. The turning point came on a cold autumn afternoon when Anna found herself sitting alone in the dim back room of the library, strewn with papers and digital printouts. With each faded yellowing ledger and blurred invoice, a weight of the town's doubt pressed harder against her chest. The relentless invisibility of her fight gnawed at her spirit, making her question if truth was enough against such a formidable opponent. Then came the hardest blow. Word spread that the town council had voted to freeze all funding for the literacy program until the investigation concluded. Supporters who once rallied behind Anna now voiced concerns that her supposed betrayal had jeopardized a vital lifeline for children and families. The program she had poured her heart into, the very reason she had connected with her community, was now suspended indefinitely. The public scorn pierced deepest here, where the consequences of the accusation rippled beyond her alone. In the bitter silence of her apartment, Anna confronted the cruelest reality. Her name was tarnished, her hands tied, and the future of her beloved project uncertain. Letters of support arrived sparingly, drowned out by mounting criticism. The local newspaper ran a scathing editorial questioning her character, further darkening the narrative. She felt herself sinking, her light dimming under the relentless storm of falsehoods. The town meeting that followed was the hardest moment of all. The room buzzed with tense anticipation. Faces she once trusted stared with skeptical eyes, their faith shattered by Richard's well-crafted lies. At the podium, Richard's smug expression carried an unspoken triumph, relishing every accusation hurled like a dagger. Anna stood by her seat, trembling but refusing to break. Her voice cracked initially when she tried to speak, but the growing silence forced her to find strength within. "I am innocent," she managed, words simple but heavy with conviction. Yet the sea of judgment seemed unyielding, and a stifling wave of shame crashed over her as her words were met with murmurs of doubt and even ridicule. That day, Anna touched the lowest point she had ever known, the depth of public humiliation, the solitude of isolation, and the devastation of watching something she loved crumble in the hands of injustice. Her heart screamed for justice, for understanding, for a chance to be heard and believed. But beneath the devastation, something began to flicker, a hardened resolve. The humiliation did not break her. Instead, it forged within her a fierce determination to reclaim her story. She wiped the tears from her cheeks and whispered into the stillness of the empty library, "This is not the end. The truth will come to light." If you've ever felt crushed by unjust judgment or faced what seemed like insurmountable odds, remember that the darkest moments often precede the breakthrough. Strength is born not from the absence of pain, but from the courage to stand up after falling. Keep believing, keep fighting. The truth has a way of making itself heard. After that devastating day when everything seemed to collapse around her, Naomi found herself wandering aimlessly through the city, the cold wind biting at her skin as if the world itself was rejecting her. Every glance from passers-by felt like a silent judgment, echoing the harsh whispers she'd endured moments before. The sting of humiliation wasn't just in their words. It had seeped into her bones, hollowing her out from the inside. Yet beneath the shroud of shame, a small flicker of something unfamiliar began to take hold, a fragile curiosity, a longing to reclaim the sense of self that seemed lost. In the following days, protected by the quiet sanctuary of her cramped apartment, Naomi started to reflect. The events had bruised more than just her pride. They had unsettled the very foundation of her identity. She realized she had spent too long silencing her instincts, acquiescing to the demands and judgments of others. The thought was uncomfortable, but it stirred a sense of possibility. One afternoon, while scrolling through her phone in a restless daze, a notification caught her attention. An invitation to a local community workshop focused on public speaking and self-empowerment. It felt oddly synchronous, as if fate had planted a signpost in her darker days. Naomi hesitated, her heart pounding with doubt and apprehension, but something deeper urged her to accept. Maybe this was the first step towards something new. When Naomi arrived at the venue, she was greeted by a warmth that contrasted starkly with the coldness of the world outside. The room was filled with diverse faces, each carrying their own stories of struggle and resilience. The facilitator, a calm woman with kind eyes named Grace, spoke softly but confidently about vulnerability, courage, and the power of reclaiming one's voice. Naomi's heart ached with recognition. She found herself nodding along, tears silently tracing the curves of her cheeks. It wasn't a quick fix. The workshop was just a beginning, a nudge toward healing that demanded patience and honesty. Naomi struggled through moments of self-doubt, her voice trembling as she shared her story in a supportive setting, feeling exposed yet inexplicably lighter. The group's acceptance acted as a balm, slowly repairing the cracks left by cruelty and judgment. Back home, Naomi discovered a tattered notebook she hadn't touched in years. On a whim, she began to write, fragments of feelings, memories, and dreams long buried. It was messy, confusing, and sometimes painful, but with each word, she chipped away at the chains of humiliation. Writing became a mirror, reflecting not the woman humiliated, but the woman fighting to rise. The more she allowed herself to feel and express, the more she noticed subtle shifts around her. Her coworkers, who had once whispered behind her back, began to meet her gaze with unexpected respect. Old friends reached out, their concern genuine and heartfelt. Even strangers smiled at her with a hint of recognition, as if sensing the quiet strength blossoming within. Still, Naomi knew this was only the beginning of a long road. The lessons from those darkest days had imprinted themselves deeply, teaching her that vulnerability could coexist with strength. That humiliation did not define her worth. The path ahead required resilience, but for the first time in a while, Naomi felt ready to walk it with purpose. If you've ever felt crushed under the weight of others' judgments, remember that growth often springs from the most painful soil. Naomi's journey is a testament to that fragile but fierce seed of hope. Don't be afraid to seek out spaces where your voice matters, where kindness touches the heart's wounds. Sometimes, the smallest step toward healing can transform your entire world. Weeks passed since Naomi took that uncertain yet courageous step into the community workshop, and a subtle strength began to radiate from her, almost imperceptible at first, like a timid bud ready to bloom. But life, as she soon realized, had one more challenge to test her newfound resilience. a revelation that would shake everything she thought she knew and turn her story in an unexpected direction. One afternoon, while sorting through old files at work, Naomi stumbled upon an unmarked envelope tucked away in a forgotten drawer. Her name was scrawled across it in a shaky, familiar handwriting, an old colleague who had left the company months ago. Curiosity urged her forward, and with trembling fingers, she opened the envelope to find a letter inside. It was from James, the coworker whose whispered rumors and sharp glances had ignited the firestorm of humiliation that nearly broke her. But this letter was different. Its tone was sincere, remorseful even, revealing truths Naomi had never imagined. James confessed that the rumors were fueled by misunderstandings and fear, born out of his own insecurities rather than any fault of hers. He admitted he had underestimated the damage his words could cause and that he envied Naomi's quiet strength from afar. He ended the letter by expressing a hope to apologize in person someday. Naomi sat frozen, the letter heavy in her hands. A cocktail of emotions surged: shock, anger, relief, and curiosity. Could this be a chance to rewrite the narrative that had haunted her? Or was it just another twist in a painful story? She debated whether to respond, worried it might reopen old wounds. But a small, unexpected part of her wanted to believe in the possibility of understanding and healing. The next day at work, Naomi was called into a meeting with her manager. Unexpected, but not intimidating. To her surprise, the company had initiated an internal review after witnessing the impact of the toxic environment on her performance and well-being. They implemented new policies to foster respect, inclusion, and support for all employees, formally addressing the culture that had allowed the harassment to fester. Word spread quickly, and Naomi found herself lifted, not only by policies, but by genuine changes. Colleagues who had distanced themselves now approached with sincere encouragement. Grace's words from the workshop echoed in her mind. True power lies in embracing your vulnerability and persisting. Then, one evening, an unexpected visitor knocked on Naomi's door. It was James. Standing awkwardly, eyes filled with both remorse and admiration, he apologized face to face for the harm he had caused. Naomi listened silently, recognizing that while forgiveness was a gift, it was hers to give in her own time. She thanked him for his courage, acknowledging that this moment felt like a closing chapter. The ripple effects of these events unfolded gradually. Naomi's reputation transformed from that of a target to a woman who had weathered storms and emerged with grace. Even more, she felt a sense of freedom she hadn't known possible, not because others had changed overnight, but because she'd reclaimed her story, her worth unshaken by past cruelty. If you've ever wrestled with betrayal or false accusations, remember Naomi's journey. Sometimes, the most profound healing comes when the unexpected, honest admission, genuine change, forces us to reassess pain and find new paths forward. True strength thrives in forgiveness, resilience, and the courage to face the past without letting it define your future. Keep your heart open, even when the world feels cold, because the light of compassion often shines where it's least expected. After that moment with James, a shift occurred in Naomi's world that felt both surreal and profoundly liberating. The weight she had carried for months, the humiliation, the whispered judgments, the doubt gnawing at her soul, began to lift, albeit gradually. But perhaps more important than any external vindication was the quiet revolution taking place inside her heart. A sense of ownership over her own story ignited, and with it came the fierce determination to forge a new path, not defined by the cruelty of others, but by her own integrity and strength. Back at work, the changes initiated by management started to reshape the environment in subtle but meaningful ways. There were new channels for dialogue and support groups, empowering employees to share their experiences safely. Naomi found herself volunteering to be part of these initiatives, stepping into a leadership role she never imagined she'd embrace. Her voice, once silenced by fear, now carried weight, inspiring others who had felt marginalized to speak up. At first, Colleagues who had been distant or dismissive approached with tentative apologies, and Naomi accepted them with grace, but maintained clear boundaries. It wasn't about retribution. It was about reclaiming respect. Some adversaries melted away, while others began to reconsider their behavior. Naomi's example planted seeds of change that would ripple through the company for years to come. Outside the office walls, Naomi's life flourished with newfound confidence. The writing she had started blossomed into blog posts that resonated widely, drawing messages from strangers who saw their own struggles reflected in her words. She found joy in mentoring young women fighting similar battles, reminding herself daily of the value in transforming pain into purpose. One afternoon, during a staff meeting, Naomi was publicly recognized for her contributions to improving workplace culture. Applause filled the room, and for the first time, she laughed, a sound clear and unencumbered, as though the weight of the past had finally been cast aside. She looked around, meeting the eyes of those who had once doubted her, feeling a wave of compassionate forgiveness. This was her moment, not just of triumph over others, but over her own fears and self-doubt. Yet the true climax wasn't just a single moment of recognition, but the ongoing choice Naomi made every day to stand tall in the face of adversity. When an unexpected conflict arose, a subtle snide remark from a new coworker, Naomi responded with calm assertiveness, refusing to be drawn into negativity. Her resilience was no longer fragile. It was a steady flame that illuminated a path not just for herself, but for anyone watching. Naomi's journey from humiliated victim to respected leader was testament to the profound truth that healing and empowerment often go hand in hand. The stigma placed upon her began to dissolve, replaced by admiration for her courage and grace. Those who had reveled in her downfall were met not with bitterness, but with an unshakable dignity, silently demonstrating that cruelty can never triumph when met with authenticity. If you find yourself at a crossroads, doubting your worth because of how others have treated you, remember Naomi's story, how standing up, speaking out, and choosing kindness transformed her darkest moments into a powerful resurgence. Justice isn't always loud or vengeful. Often, it's the quiet victory in reclaiming your power and never settling for less than respect. This is the strength we all carry within us, the strength to rise, to forgive, and to rewrite the narrative on our own terms. Embrace it. Believe it. You are more than the hardships you face. Weeks passed since Naomi took that uncertain yet courageous step into the community workshop, and a subtle strength began to radiate from her, almost imperceptible at first, like a timid bud ready to bloom. But life, as she soon realized, had one more challenge to test her newfound resilience, a revelation that would shake everything she thought she knew, and turn her story in an unexpected direction. One afternoon, while sorting through old files at work, Naomi stumbled upon an unmarked envelope tucked away in a forgotten drawer. Her name was scrawled across it in a shaky, familiar handwriting, an old colleague who had left the company months ago. Curiosity urged her forward, and with trembling fingers, she opened the envelope to find a letter inside. It was from James, the coworker whose whispered rumors and sharp glances had ignited the firestorm of humiliation that nearly broke her. But this letter was different. Its tone was sincere, remorseful even, revealing truths Naomi had never imagined. James confessed that the rumors were fueled by misunderstandings and fear, born out of his own insecurities rather than any fault of hers. He admitted he had underestimated the damage his words could cause, and that he envied Naomi's quiet strength from afar. He ended the letter by expressing a hope to apologize in person someday. Naomi sat frozen, the letter heavy in her hands. A cocktail of emotions surged: shock, anger, relief, and curiosity. Could this be a chance to rewrite the narrative that had haunted her? Or was it just another twist in a painful story? She debated whether to respond, worried it might reopen old wounds. But a small, unexpected part of her wanted to believe in the possibility of understanding and healing. The next day at work, Naomi was called into a meeting with her manager. Unexpected, but not intimidating. To her surprise, the company had initiated an internal review after witnessing the impact of the toxic environment on her performance and well-being. They implemented new policies to foster respect, inclusion, and support for all employees, formally addressing the culture that had allowed the harassment to fester. Word spread quickly, and Naomi found herself lifted, not only by policies, but by genuine changes. Colleagues who had distanced themselves now approached with sincere encouragement. Grace's words from the workshop echoed in her mind. True power lies in embracing your vulnerability and persisting. Then one evening, an unexpected visitor knocked on Naomi's door. It was James, standing awkwardly, eyes filled with both remorse and admiration. He apologized face to face for the harm he had caused. Naomi listened silently, recognizing that while forgiveness was a gift, it was hers to give in her own time. She thanked him for his courage, acknowledging that this moment felt like a closing chapter. The ripple effects of these events unfolded gradually. Naomi's reputation transformed from that of a target to a woman who had weathered storms and emerged with grace. Even more, she felt a sense of freedom she hadn't known possible, not because others had changed overnight, but because she'd reclaimed her story, her worth unshaken by past cruelty. If you've ever wrestled with betrayal or false accusations, remember Naomi's journey. Sometimes the most profound healing comes when the unexpected, honest admission, genuine change, forces us to reassess pain and find new paths forward. True strength thrives in forgiveness, resilience, and the courage to face the past without letting it define your future. Keep your heart open, even when the world feels cold, because the light of compassion often shines where it's least expected.